You are listening to We Saw the Devil, an investigative and conversational true crime podcast that deep dives into fascinating criminal cases that are solved, unsolved, or ongoing. From America's Lori Vallow to Germany's Armin Meiwes, we examine and discuss the world's most shocking cases. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to follow us online. Check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com and We Saw the Devil on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget, you can become part of the show by backing us on Patreon. Hello, everyone. You are listening to We Saw the Devil. This is Robin, and I am so excited for this episode, guys. I don't know what possessed Brittany in particular to come up with this idea, but I have not laughed as hard in my life as I did while we were recording this. This episode is the dramatic table reading of Chad Daybell's pathetic, disgusting, cringeworthy, Cinemax wannabe attempt at Erotica that he sent to Lori Vallow. Brittany will be providing some additional context, such as where this document came from, when we get into it. But before we do so, let's just get some announcements and housekeeping out of the way. It has been about a week since my last episode that I put out, and guys, I'm going to keep it level with you. You know, a lot of us podcasters, we do have normal 9-to-5s, and I just so happened to have started a new job 2 weeks ago. And as you know, with a lot of jobs, I'm a project manager. That job in itself is crazy, hectic, long hours. It takes some time to get ramped up and get, into the swing of things, get into the groove. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks, is starting a new job, ramping up, and getting with the program. I also had to do renovation, create a new office space outside of the studio portion of my house that I use for recording the podcast. As some of you know, I think, if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, I have a new puppy too. So in the same week, I got a brand new puppy, started a new job, and started renovating an office. So it has been quite busy, to say the least, but it's gotten better. And going forward, I can go back to the promised schedule of 2 episodes per week. And a massive apology yet again to our patrons for still not having the Patreon-only episode out. I promise that it will be coming this week. I have done a lot of admin work over this weekend, since it was the first weekend that I've actually been able to relax a little bit, not have work stuff or house stuff to deal with. So we are now back in the saddle and in the swing of things. To the relevant portion, guys, you can find us at WeSawTheDevil.com. And from there, you can find all of our social media channels, our Patreon, which is patreon.com/WeSawTheDevil if you want to financially back the show. I did just send out the new round of Amazon Prime gifts for October to our top 2-tier patrons. So be on the lookout for an Amazon Prime truck at your location. But yeah, it's a fun time. And as always, if you are loving the show, liking the show, please take just 10-20 seconds out of your day to leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you are listening on. It's greatly appreciated and actually means the world to us in more ways than one, for sponsors, ads, recognition, charting, things like that. So if you're really actually digging the show or think this episode is even funny, please head over and leave a 5-star review if you have it in your heart. Aside from that, guys, let's just go ahead and get to it, and I'm going to go ahead and air our table reading. Hello, everyone. As promised, we are back with a very, very, very special table reading. And Brittany, what will we be doing today?
Well, as you guys may be aware, Chad Daybell wrote I'd call it a romance novel, but I think it's more of like doomsday erotica. And we're going to read through this, and we're going to get through this together as a family.
There may be necessary hugs at the end of this, and don't worry, we will have you covered.
No, I do not want to be touched after this.
I can't say as though I blame you.
So here's the background. Basically, Chandler PD had this massive document dump. We were still experiencing some of it occasionally. And in one of these troves, an agent kind of found this text message randomly between Chad and Lori. It started on July 13th of 2019. So this would have been right after Charles was shot and killed, but still before Tammy had passed away. And Chad sent this text to Lori that said, "I'm heading to bed so that I can come snuggle tightly against you. I adore you. You are truly my best friend on earth and throughout eternity. See you in a minute. 3 heart emojis, 3 kiss emojis, 3 flame emojis. The next day, Chad decided to write a story that was based around how Chad and Lori met. But he swapped the names. He became James and Lori became Elena. It's disgusting.
It's pretty gag-inducing, guys. We're really sorry for this, but we're not at the same time.
Also, I found it hilarious that Chandler PD made it a point to say, quote, "This text is just as it appeared in the messages and has not been corrected for grammatical errors." And guys, Chad Daybell was an author, so...
And
this is bad.
We are going to read it exactly as it was written.
Well, I mean, I think we do need to take some creative liberty, Robin. I think there's like a tone that he was going for, and I'm hoping we can capture that.
Oh, there's certainly a tone with this. And I really, really hope that we are feeling that vibe.
Okay. We got 2 chapters. Let's do this.
Friday morning, October 26th, driving south on the freeway, a voice said, "You will meet an extraordinary woman who will change your life forever." This was shocking, since such a thing seemed very unlikely at this conference. It is actually a very detailed story that began long ago on another world, and I will cover that part as I go along and the characters figure things out. But on the morning of October 26th, James arrived in St. George, still a bit baffled by the message he had received. He unloaded his books and set up his table, then joined the organizers for dinner in the main room. He saw his friend MG.
That's Melanie Gibb, guys.
Who had been so helpful to him when he spoke in Mesa that July. MG introduced James to her friend Elena. When their hands touched, he felt a shock pass through him and his heart started beating fast. Elena was gorgeous and vivacious, and James was a little intimidated, yet honored that she would talk to him. He was happily surprised when she mentioned a key part of his novel, The Renewed Earth.
That's his real book.
No one had ever recognized the significance of that scene before. He had heard that voice before and seen that smile before. He felt they had even talked like this before, but who could be certain when? It was strange, but he could remember. The feelings were very strong, as if they had known each other oh so long.
How long?
Oh, so long.
Okay.
They didn't get many chances to talk after that, because he had to help voice a woman's blue weapon. I can't say that with a straight face.
Got this. This is a totally normal erotica thing. Everyone talks about this, shoving a fist up a puppet's butt.
It's like
fine.
a fucking porn title. They didn't get many chances to talk after that because he had to help voice a woman's blue muppet. But he watched her every chance he could. He had to stay at a relative's house that night, but he hardly slept. He kept envisioning himself with Elena in very wonderful situations that indicated that they had been more than just friends. James was the first speaker on Saturday morning and knew exactly where Elena was sitting. He made sure to mention the scene from his book that had been discussed the previous evening. He was completely smitten by her and even was nervous of what she would think of his talk as he spoke. But when he would glance at her, she was always attentive and watching him, unlike the rest of the crowd. After his talk, he went to his book table. His talk had gone well and there was a good group gathered around to buy books. His heart nearly leaked out of his chest when Elena joined him and helped sell the books. She was so beautiful that he could hardly concentrate on the customers. She straightened the books and gave the books great reviews, although she made him laugh a lot when she kept pushing the youth and 5th volumes of the first series. He could only giggle when people asked if she was his wife, because in fact, she was. She just didn't know it yet.
I can't on that one.
What? James was definitely having amorous feelings towards Elena as they sold books together. He had not felt this happy in his entire life. He was quite sure that this was the woman the voice had told him about. James was ecstatic because he had already fallen deeply in love with her. Or better said, he remembered how much he already loved her. Her eyes had mesmerized him from the moment they met, but once the book sales slowed down, she stood near him behind a table. They looked deeply into each other's eyes for the first time, and he knew he was in the presence of a goddess. He resisted an impulse to kiss her, but his entire body was on fire. He instinctively knew she was everything he had ever dreamed of. I must clarify that James is a very difficult person to get information from. He has been blessed with great knowledge, but 99% of the people he knows do not realize that. God. He is very guarded, and it is a great task to gain his trust. But as Elena leaned toward him and asked a couple of very insightful questions, his heart burst with joy. He knew she was one of the very few people on earth he could trust. James's spirit was so excited at this revelation that he shattered a thick veil that had been placed...
What kind of veil?
Thick.
Cool.
Thick veil that had been placed between these two souls during their mortal lives. The thick veil had been...
What kind?
Thick veil had been placed because of the unique, unparalleled love James and Elena had shared in previous lifetimes. That veil had prevented them from finding each other until this appointed day that would be remembered throughout the heavens as the true beginning of a spectacular mission that would save millions of souls and defeat the forces of darkness.
Classic erotica theme so far, yes.
Like erotica, like this is Lord of the Rings fan fiction. James's physical attraction to Elena was almost overwhelming, but he was equally drawn to the spiritual energy that was radiating from her. As they talked, it was confirmed to him that they had indeed been married before and were eternal companions. He had glimpses of them walking dusty paths together, and he realized they had been married during the life of Jesus Christ, and they had been very close to him.
How close?
Very close.
Cool.
Very close. Thick close.
Thick close.
At this time, their spirits could not be restrained any longer, and a long-awaited makeout session took place in the lobby. This was manifest in the mortal world to James and Elena through the scientific phenomenon known as loin fire. And then, whoop, there it is. Oh,
I cannot handle that.
Again, scientific phenomenon known as loin fire.
All right, go ahead.
As they talked, James had a burning desire to make love to her, but he wasn't sure if she felt the same way. But they could not stay away from each other. One time, she was sitting in a couch near his table, and he took a seat on a chair about 5 feet from her. She began to squirm and covered her body with her hands. She asked him, "What are you doing?" He wasn't aware of what she meant. All he knew was that if Bruce Porter hadn't been giving them an evil eye, a child would have been conceived on that couch.
In a hotel lobby?
Yep. When loin fire hits, man.
Sick.
Okay. The erotic tension continued throughout the afternoon. James could only think of her. His desire for her was indescribable. Thankfully, she had worn 16 layers of clothing to survive the 80-degree weather, so he was not fully aware that she truly had the body of a goddess. Her dimensions were exactly what he had always fantasized about, but that revelation would have to wait a month.
Just a quick interjection. What's it like for Chad Daybell's kids to know that this was what their dad masturbated to, like, constantly?
God. Her dimensions.
These were the dimensions I've always fantasized about.
As the night concluded, James needed to take his empty boxes to his car. With Elena's help, he had sold more books at a show than he ever had before. She helped him carry boxes to the car, and then he could not resist the desire to hug her. He made an awkward attempt that was way too brief because their friends were bringing more boxes. In that shirt embrace, though, he knew he had found the woman he had searched for his entire life. It was made crystal clear to him that they had been married before and would be again. He once again had to fight off a powerful urge to kiss her and somehow disguise the massive erection he was experiencing. They returned to the building, and he helped carry tables to the second floor while she sat on the couch. They couldn't take their eyes off of each other. He was already madly in love. Her group of friends finally had to leave. He was devastated, unsure how he would ever contact her again. Then her spirit took over and asked him, "Can I get your cell number just in case I have some questions?" They exchanged numbers and then gave each other a hug goodbye. It was the most wonderful, electric, delicious hug he had ever felt. Then he watched her walk away, knowing she was truly going to change his life forever.
And that's the end of chapter 1. Robin, What are we thinking?
Oh man, massive erections, loin fires, conceiving children on hotel lobbies. Like, damn.
I mean, I didn't know that it was possible for someone with like a 4th grade reading level to attempt to write something like it's just so awkward and disgusting.
So, okay, honestly, my favorite part of this isn't even the loin fire. It's that him saying that he's the smartest person basically ever, but 99% of people don't know.
Exactly. Like, it's a secret.
He's
guarded.
Right. You have to earn his trust to realize that he's smarter than you, okay?
Exactly. And the best way to show him, like if you want to show Chad Daybell the greatest day ever, just sell some books with him. He said this is his favorite thing. Best day of his life was selling books.
So what I also learned, though, is that the Lifetime movie got all of this wrong.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, they got the whole, like, electric touch thing. That happened. Okay, yeah, they got the rest of it wrong.
Yeah, they got all of it wrong, but I'm really upset about this loin fire. Continue.
All right, chapter 2. James sadly walked to his car after watching Elena disappear down the hallway, but he couldn't deny their connection and his absolute attraction to her. She still seemed way out of his league, but he nervously sent her a text before driving to his hotel. A minute passed, then 2, without a response. He kicked himself for thinking he ever had a chance with her. Then his phone buzzed. Elena had texted back. His heart soared, and over the next few hours, they texted back and forth dozens of times. He knew she was staying at a home in Tokerville. He desperately wanted to drive there and whisk her back to the hotel for a night of reconnection and romance. He twice got redressed during the night to go see her. But the spirit gently said, "Have patience. Everything will work out as it is supposed to." They finally stopped texting at around 4 a.m. And when he closed his eyes to sleep, he was taken again to their previous life together. The intense passion of their lovemaking was a sight to behold. He knew it would be difficult, but he could be patient if it meant he could experience that type of love just once in his life. As he lay in the hotel bed, it was as if her spirit had joined him. They wrapped around each other and kissed gently, then intensely, and the emotions they shared were not of this world. James woke up. Okay, that's Chad Daybell saying he had a wet dream. James woke up in the hotel room, feeling happier than he had in his entire life. It felt like he and Elena had fit together perfectly in every way. He rolled over to kiss her, but then reality struck. She was actually more than 20 miles away in Tokerville with her Arizona friends. He texted her, and she quickly responded. He deeply regretted not going to be with her the night before. It was as if he already knew the taste of her lips. Sick. And his hands knew every curve of her body. He knows his dreams were somehow real and that they were actually traveling to each other in a higher dimension. He hungered for her in ways he didn't think were possible. The voice was right. Elena was going to change his life forever. He packed his suitcase and began driving north on the freeway. As each mile passed, James could feel Elena's spirit beckoning for him to join her. As he approached the Tokerville exit, it took every ounce of willpower to keep on driving on the freeway. His attraction to her was beyond magnetic. He felt their souls were 2 halves of an eternal union. Tears filled his eyes as he passed the freeway exit. He desperately yearned to embrace her and tell her he deeply loved her, as crazy as it sounded. But he knew he would be seeing her 3 weeks later at a conference in Arizona.
Now, question. He had just met her for the first time ever.
The day before.
Yeah, like less than 12 hours
24
before.
hours.
Yeah.
It had not even been 24 hours yet.
Okay. Continue.
And he had his one wet dream. They are in love, and now he's crying in his car. But yeah, totally normal. I know it sounds crazy, but it's not.
Totally normal.
Totes. It seemed like an eternity away, but he sensed it would be a very significant weekend for them. He already was crazy about her, and Huz's feelings of admiration and affection for her would only grow more intense and wonderful. Huz, H-U-S, not his. During his long drive home. I don't know why I had to read it like that. I just made myself get grossed out.
I think I hear my mama calling. Like, I'm good. Bye.
I did not need to do that to myself.
Or me. What about me?
Ugh.
Continue.
James was able... Wow, this is dangerous. During his long drive home, James was able to text back and forth with Elena, and it was clear they were extremely compatible and shared the same interests. It felt like talking to a long-distance best friend. When he arrived home, he searched the internet for anything about her, but there was nothing. She was a fascinating mystery that wanted to spend the rest of eternity with. At the end of his drive, she suggested that they talk on the phone the next day. He was thrilled at the thought of hearing her voice again. He was falling more madly in love by the minute.
And they were texting.
Mm-hmm. Also, how do you not find anything for someone's name on the internet?
Well, I mean, it's Chad Daybell.
Second, also, why would you search someone's name on the internet you met the day before?
Hey, when loin fire calls, it calls.
Oh, and does it, Robin. And boy, does it. When James heard her voice that Monday morning, the euphoria he had felt Saturday came rushing back strongly. They talked for 2 hours, but it seemed to be only minutes. He was obsessed with her, and he couldn't get enough. During that first phone conversation with Elena, James realized she had already had a strong understanding of the many truths that he had been taught regarding how the universe really worked. The lounge fire and obsession with each other had no real explanation unless they truly had a spiritual connection before this life. He was able to help clarify many things of the promptings and impressions she had felt in recent years. She knew she had lived on Earth before, and James was able to clarify when. They had been married before on this Earth and other times on a previous Earth. Their love truly spanned the universe and eons of time. They knew the Lord had brought them together for a crucial mission that only they could accomplish as a united couple. During the next week, they spoke every day for at least 1 hour, but often longer. They hungered to know everything about each other. This was a new experience for James to open up and share the true feelings of his heart, but he knew he could trust her completely. The bond between them was intense, and only the vast distance between them kept their passion for each other from roaring into a blazing inferno. She quickly became his best friend. Or better said, 2 best friends had reunited, and their prior love was now ignited again in a wonderful, heavenly way. As November began, James and Elena had talked on the phone every day since last seeing each other. He was extremely impressed with her intelligence, personality, and subtle humor that made him laugh more than he had in his lifetime. She was a complete delight to talk to, and the highlight of his day was when he could hear her magical voice. It was so familiar to him, it actually healed and soothed his heart and soul. They would both attend the same event in mid-November, and it seemed like that day would never arrive. Each day, they opened their hearts to each other a little more, and James knew he could trust her with the mysteries of the universe that had been revealed to him. He knew they had been married before, and they had been close friends with the Savior when he lived in Jerusalem. James had served in an important position in the Lord's church, and Elena had been his beloved spouse and best friend. The relationship was now meant to continue in this lifetime. This next one, dude.
I do not envy you right now.
Okay. In Jerusalem, James and Elena had enjoyed tremendous intimacy. Their physical desire for each other was unmatched, and they were fortunate that they could be alone, morning, noon, and night, and they seized every chance to passionately express their love to each other. They simply could never get enough, even after many years of marriage. Everyone knew they were crazy about each other, and they were a wonderful example of how spouses should cleave together in love and unity. James had vision, damn it. James had visions of how they would happily and joyfully pleasure each other in his office. A quick note, James also forgot to mention he was no longer in Jerusalem for this. I don't think he had an office when he was working in Jesus' church.
Right.
They had two favorite positions that particularly bonded them together. Nothing meant more to James than holding Elena in his arms and unifying their bodies in perfect synchronization. As James and Elena talked on the phone, he tried to delicately describe their connection to each other, and he was delighted that she believed him.
Oh. That must not have taken a lot of convincing.
Hey, babe, so, remember I told you we used to be, like, kicking it with Jesus? And, I don't even know how you would segue into, like, Kama Sutra after that.
I'm just, like, imagining his voice talking about that.
Like, I want to hear it. I want the conversations. I want more of this, but also I never want it in my mind again. How do I balance this? Okay, here we go. He also shared they'd been married other times on a previous world, and she accepted that information as well. James was overjoyed to have these memories restored to him because he truly loved her with all his heart. He knew they were meant to be married again and complete important missions together before the second coming. He was ecstatic that she was receiving confirmation of these things as well. As they talked on the phone, their spiritual connection was so intense that it produced physical desires, and it was as if their spirits were making love despite the great distance between them. James knew his spirit was visiting her during those conversations. He also became aware that his spirit would visit her at night, and they would wrap around each other in a sensual embrace. Kissing her was so wonderful and real.
Oh my God.
And he knew that the next time they saw each other, he needed to kiss her. He wouldn't be able to resist holding her. He was absolutely in love with her in every way. By the time the conference arrived, James and Elena had become very close through their phone conversations, but he desperately needed to see her again. She agreed to pick him up at the airport and take him to his hotel. Oh, snap. He was extremely nervous, worried that the spark that they had felt earlier might not be there. But as she arrived at the airport and he opened the car door, his heart nearly burst at the sight of her smile. She was stunningly gorgeous, and as they gripped each other's hands, the electricity was tangible. The love between them was powerful and real. The hotel was only a short distance away, and he invited her into the room. They were soon standing alone in the room, and he put his arm around her and looked into her gorgeous blue eyes. They hungered for each other, and he leaned forward and fulfilled a promise he had made to her a few days earlier. He gently kissed her tender lips, and that same heavenly electricity filled his entire body. The passionate magic they had felt many centuries earlier came surging back powerfully. James moved to the couch, and Elena straddled him effortlessly. Why did I agree to chapter 2?
I did this on purpose.
James moved to the couch, and Elena straddled him effortlessly, as if they had done this thousands of times before. She fit perfectly on him, and they pressed their loins tightly against each other. The feeling was exquisite, and they both smiled. Oh, damn it. They both smiled and moaned at the sensations passing between them. They were still fully clothed, but the intensity of the intimacy was undeniable. James felt the powerful desire to bless Elena at that time. Woof. As they stayed in that favorite position, he moved his hands to her head and began to cleanse and purify each part of her body. He could feel the pains and troubles she had endured throughout her life being removed from her soul and being taken outside and destroyed. Oh, this next part. James's hands worked their way down her body and lingered briefly on her beautiful breasts. She truly had the body of a goddess, and he was experiencing an indescribable mix of physical and spiritual ecstasy. He soon concluded the cleansing of her body from head to toe, then filled her body with a balm of light and love.
You know he was just pawing at her like a rabid Wolverine.
There was no way it was graceful or tasteful in any way.
In any way.
It was definitely like predatory, probably. Like when SNL cast members make out, you know, you're just like, God, why?
Yes.
James could see the happiness in her eyes, and instinctively their mouths came together again. The fire was burning strongly within them both. And as their kissing grew more intense, he gently said, I love you, Elena. Real quick, I actually bet you that part's real. I bet you out of absolutely nowhere, he said another woman's name.
Really? I would think that he would actually say hers. I swear to God, all of this is so predatory to begin with. Even in his own writing, you can tell that he was trying to convince her nonstop. You know, he basically
we were married.
This. Yeah, we were married. We were married. This is real. This is real. Like, and so I would not be surprised at all if the very first time they kiss, 3 weeks after they met for the first time, was it?
Well, they made out, according to this, they made out the same day.
Same day, yeah. And then he's like, I love you, Lori. Like, I would not be surprised at all.
So this went in 3 weeks after them meeting.
Yeah.
And they've texted, they've called every day. Yeah, it's all super gross.
And now they're about to start bumping uglies.
I mean, but with clothes on. So they're not,
keep it classy, okay? He's married. Gotta keep it classy.
I love that aspect of this. They never mention that. So it's just like these like casual things. She made him the happiest he'd ever been. It's like, Chad, you held 5 of your own children in your hands. Was there never a happy moment ever?
Right?
Nope. Selling books with Lori.
Right? Having her bring an empty box to his car.
Top shelf boner. This is it. Gosh. Okay. So, I love you, Elena. Those words sparked a frenzy within them. Their tongues effortlessly entwined, and their hips gyrated in a smooth, erotic rhythm. 2 lovers, long separated, were finally united in heavenly bliss. After a few minutes of excitement and pleasure and fun on the couch, James and Elena both felt compelled to change into more comfortable clothing. James, out in some athletic shorts and a blue shirt, and Elena put on a stunning black top and tight leggings. The top revealed just enough, but not too much, and James was overjoyed at the sight. James took her in his arms and they smiled at each other. The vibration in the room was intense, and their hearts reached out to each other in glorious reunion. James gently touched the sides of Elena's breasts, and he was in ecstasy. She stood on her tiptoes and gave him a sensual kiss that sent electricity through his body. They moved towards the bed and were quickly entwined around each other. She was so beautiful, loving, and enchanting that James could hardly breathe. They were both aroused, but he knew there were limitations on what could occur that night. But they kissed for nearly an hour and pressed against each other tightly. Toward the end of the evening, Elena lawed, L-A-U-D, on her stomach at the end of the bed, and James caressed her fabulous body. He grasped her perfect bottom with both hands, and she expressed how much she loved that. She soon sat up and straddled him again as they passionately kissed farewell. They knew they would see each other again in the morning, but the separation seemed too long. But they knew that long wait to find their eternal match had come to an end, and James was overjoyed beyond description. James and Elena had agreed to visit the temple the following morning. She returned to the hotel room, and after additional romance on the couch, they calmed their nerves enough to give each other a blessing. As James placed his hands on her head, he connected with Elena's true eternal self. He knew he was in the presence of an exalted goddess who had returned to Earth to perform a special mission. This mission included being with him. And they would progress together as translated beings. The full plan wasn't completely clear to him, but the immense power radiating from her confirmed his belief that she was among the greatest women in the universe. She then gave him a tremendous blessing that helped him realize how much she truly loved him and wanted to be with him forever. He was deeply humbled that such an incredible woman regarded him so highly. His heart burned as she blessed him. And he had glimpses come to mind, not only of their life in Jerusalem, but even as a couple on a previous Earth. He knew they'd been eternal companions for eons and that their love was beyond celestial. They embraced following the blessings, and the emotions they felt were a mixture of eternal bliss, celestial desire. Okay. The sexual chemistry was undeniable. The spiritual unity was a glorious bonus for them both. They had only known each other for 3 weeks, but two lonely, misunderstood souls had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in. They arrived at the temple, and they both felt they should do sealings together. They were soon seated in a sealing room facing each other. Elena looked so stunning as she smiled at him. She seemed calm, while he felt quite nervous. Their opportunity soon came to kneel across the altar from each other, and as the sealer pronounced those sacred words, James and Elena knew that they were now sealed as husband and wife for eternity. As the earthly sealing was taking place, a similar scene involving spirits was happening in a higher plane, where they kissed and unified their souls. They knew they had begun a new journey together that was eternal and never ended. After the sealing, they went to lunch together, and they felt so comfortable together. Everything felt so right. James could look into her eyes forever unless he was gently kissing her and telling her how much he loved her. Even when they held hands, there was a powerful vibration that exceeded the telestial world. They attended the conference, but their thoughts were completely focused on each other. James gave a talk that was well received and sparked great interest in his books. Elena joined him at the selling table, and they sold more than 359 books within a couple of hours. But all they really wanted to slip away and express their love to each other. They went to dinner with some friends, but afterwards, they were able to find some time alone. They drove to a secluded area and slipped into the back seat. Elena was wearing a pair of incredibly sexy jeans. As she straddled James in the back seat, he once again grasped her fantastic bottom. She pushed him back into a reclining position, and their loins fit together perfectly. They kissed passionately and rhythmically pulsated against each other. Their love was intense and undeniably real. James was now madly, crazily in love with her, and it was so wonderful to know she felt the same way about him. One powerful moment happened earlier that day when Elena was listening to another speaker. James stayed at the table, but he thought he heard Elena say, "Come stand behind me." He went into the room and he saw her standing against a wall. He moved behind her and they discreetly touched. After a few minutes, he checked his phone and he saw she had texted him that very sentence. At the stone, he heard her voice. It was a wonderful testament that they were already communicating with each other on a higher level. They helped clean up the conference, and Elena graciously allowed James to stay in her spare bedroom at her home that night. They visited with other friends until after midnight. Then they all went to bed. James anxiously hoped Elena would join him in the spare room. It took a while for everyone to settle into their beds. Once the house quieted down, James opened his door slightly and saw the wondrous sight of Elena approaching the room. They locked the door behind her and quickly got under the covers. He was wearing his athletic shorts, and she was wearing tight, thin leggings and a loose top. They clung to each other and kissed desperately. James placed his hands under her top and caressed her splendid breasts. Oh, no. She moaned happily and wrapped her legs around his waist. Only 2 things of layers of material separated their loins. They could feel each other's most intimate parts in detail.
Intimate body parts.
Ugh. Why is this written like it's like an anatomy book
It's so
doing a
clinical.
porno?
Yeah, it's like clinical as fuck.
Could you make an AI like bot read a anatomy and physiology book and be like, "Okay, now do porn." Ugh. The intensity and spiritual vibration exceeded anything either one of them had ever felt before. They knew their spirits were actually intimately joined together, and it felt like they had left the telestial world. Elena soon got on top of James, and their rhythmic ecstasy continued for several more minutes. Towards the end, they both removed their tops and pressed their bodies together, skin on skin. They fit together perfectly, and their kisses were deep and frenzied. Their desire for each other was beyond compare.
Okay, so they're dry humping, but why didn't they go all the way? Like, what was the limitation here? They've already pretty much done everything but.
Dude, it's so blasphemous. So, like, the fact that they were both cheating on their... Well, okay, I guess Lori was no longer married at that point. I mean, Chad was. And when you're Mormon, even if you're, like, not married, you're still supposed to be... They call it chaste. Like, you're not even supposed to be sexually active at all. At all. Like, first base is the limit. So, not only were they both not really adhering to that, but Chad was cheating on his wife, which is an excommunicatable offense within the church. And they went to the temple, which is like beyond blasphemous. All of this is so terrible. Anyone who's Mormon who's listening, like, trust us, like, we know how bad this is. But the fact at this point, to your point, Robin, of like, why not? Like, at this point, you've already murdered someone, at least one person. Joe Ryan, it's still kind of like not sure, right? But at this point, why not just have sex? I do not understand the logic.
Right, like, that's what I'm not getting exactly. Like, he is 100% cheating on Tammy at this point. And they are dry humping, and at this point they remove their tops. Like,
I don't get it. Like, if you've already gone to this point, I don't understand why they're respecting this one rule that's like so far down the list on their other offenses so far.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, no, by all means, dry hump away. Hotel lobbies, guest rooms, hotels, whatever. As the reunion in the spare room came to a conclusion. Oh, and by the way, now Chad messed up his own name. He accidentally called himself Raphael here. So excuse that. He's no longer James in this one sentence. As the reunion in the spare room came to a conclusion, Raphael knew Elena was his perfect match. They longed to stay entwined together, but it would be best to separate and get some rest. But by 6 a.m., James couldn't stand to be away from her any longer. He slipped into her bedroom and stood at her bedside. She was unbelievably gorgeous, and he greatly desired to join her in the bed and continue the previous night's activities. But there were other guests in the house who weren't yet aware of their sizzling love for each other. He gently touched her shoulder to awaken her. Her eyes opened, and she reached up and grabbed his arms to pull him into the bed. He smiled, realizing she wasn't fully awake and had likely been dreaming of him. He simply whispered he loved her, and he hoped she would go walking with him through the neighborhood. James and Elena had enjoyed a walk together the previous morning along the quiet streets of her gated community. The sensual attraction between them had been intense, and they had touched shoulders and held hands as they walked. They were like magnets that couldn't be separated. She had worn exercise leggings that drove him crazy with desire. The leggings emphasized her perfectly sculpted bottom, and it took all of his willpower not to pull her to him and grasp that bottom firmly and powerfully with both hands while kissing her passionately. They went walking again that next morning. Unfortunately, a friend invited herself along, but James and Elena were still completely engrossed in each other.
Looking at you, MG.
He had to... What?
Looking at you, MG.
That's right, Melanie Gibb coming in being that cockblock. He had to catch a flight home later that morning. but he was able to give Elena a special blessing before departing. As he placed his hands on her head, he felt their spirits connect with a surge of power. At that moment, his only desire in life was to be with her as always throughout eternity, and that desire has continued to intensify. During the blessing, he was shown the great missions they would perform together. He knew this was an eternal union that would forever change the world. Tears filled his eyes to be in the presence of this holy goddess, and he was nearly overcome by the spirit as he sensed her true place in the universe as a majestic archangel.
That was a lot. Like, instead of unpacking this suitcase, can we just throw the whole fucking thing out?
I wish it was that easy, Robin, but unfortunately...
Oh, no.
I just think, we have so many loose ends already at this case that we really wouldn't be doing it justice if we didn't try and tie up this one. Like, it's the one thing that we can fix for everyone here. We can't give answers to anything else, but we can definitely give these listeners chapter 3. I call it the climax.
Oh, God.
I ghost wrote this for Chad Daybell, guys. And, Chad, if you ever listen to this, I guess I'll sign the rights over to you when you're out, bud. But I wrote this as Chad, so I just want you guys to know, I didn't write this to be offensive. Chad is already offensive. I had to stay in character for this. So when Robin reads this, just keep it in mind. Like, this was just my job as a ghostwriter. Okay? Okay. We're going to be cool about this. Are you ready?
I'm scared. I'm ready.
Okay.
Chapter 3, The Climax. James was alone in his hotel. Hey, fuck. I know what's coming. Literally, not figuratively. Okay. Get my gag reflex ready. Okay.
I had to get my pillow so I don't laugh too hard and get a hernia.
Be careful. You may have to take a nap.
I'll have to take a nap.
James was alone in his hotel room, missing Elena as usual. Their walk that morning was so thick with romance, the only thing keeping him from smiling was the light chafing he had experienced from the walk. James went into the bathroom of his hotel room, which was inside of the hotel. He opened the small bottle of lotion, gave it a little squeeze, and the lotion erupted into the palm of his hand. He rubbed his palms together and then opened them to take a good whiff. It was made crystal clear to him that he knew that smell. I hate you so much right now.
Damn it.
The spirit confirmed that this was the same lotion that James used in other lifetimes. Even when Jesus was still alive. After addressing his chafing and enjoying sensual thoughts of himself in another life as a young hot Jew making sweet, sweet love to Elena, James crawled into his hotel bed and sent a short goodnight text to Elena with every single heart emoji. Suddenly, or better said, unexpectedly, there was a knock at the door. James waddled to the door and his heart nearly jumped out of his neck when he realized it was Elena. He thrust open the door and pulled her into his arms for another delicious, amorous hug. Elena said, "Not so fast, mister. You know we can't have sexual intercourse until marriage, no matter how bright our loin fire burns." "You're right. We have to wait until both of our spouses and our children die in tragic yet perfectly timed accidents or murders," said James. Oh my God. They both smiled and stared deeply into each other's eyes, the same eyes they had been staring into repeatedly for no reason for weeks on end. Elena leaned in and whispered into his ear, "James, I have a surprise for you." James instinctively began to think of whatever it could be. Elena opened the door to reveal their friend, MG. "Elena, no. MG, what are you?" The massive erection inside of James's shorts quickly disappeared. "Relax, James," MG said. "Haven't you ever heard of jump humping?" That's it. This is the day that I regret learning how to read.
I love this. This turned out perfectly. For anyone who's unaware what jump humping is, Robin, would you please educate?
Yeah, so this is something that I learned via TikTok. And apparently in some of the younger, especially, I guess, like LDS crowd, like more college age students, jump humping is it like a thing? Is it new or has it been around for a while?
I don't know how to answer that.
You mean you've never participated in jump humping?
I have not ever felt the need to participate in jump humping.
So what jump humping is, again, LDS community, college age, it's where, say, guy and a girl, right? They're dating. Obviously, you can't offend the Lord, so you can't have sexual intercourse. You can't have
Correct.
Penetrative sex, right? So they found a loophole, guys, and that's where a guy and a girl can get in bed or wherever, and the guy can basically insert himself to the opening of the girl's vagina.
Why are you making this awful?
And they get a friend to come in the room with them and
you call your little MG
down.
over.
Yeah, call your little MG over, and they get their friend to jump up and down on the bed, thus causing the back and forth, friction, like rhythm motion. So technically they're not actually having sex by their own accord.
You dock the boat in the harbor and your ocean friend brings the motion.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding of it.
Well, as we all know, Melanie Gibb was the highest trust rating on their scale. And if there was anyone who was, called with that sacred duty, it would probably be her.
What's the over under of Chad having tried this with Melanie Gibb first?
Every account, including Melanie's with this latest interview, she swears up and down that he never tried anything with her.
This is just so ridiculous. All of it is just like this circle jerk, like wet dream that he's had of being the sad fat bastard who, is trying to like relive some glory days from high school.
But not even like relive or anything. Like everything about this is beyond sad. It's like he never really took a chance to live his life in the first place.
Yeah.
And so then he had to like become incredibly predatory on anyone who would listen. Like you'll even notice in his actual story before we just like shit on all of it. Appropriately though. But there's that part where he was like, everyone at the conference wasn't even listening except for her. That's why I love her. It kind of went both ways with their grooming of each other. Like he would be like, we were married. Like, I know this. And then she would pay him a little bit of attention. And it just like, I can totally see how they were predatory on each other. I don't know.
Why do you think she was attracted to him in the beginning? Say that initial conference, because he had power, because he was a well-known figure?
I don't even think he is a well-known figure. I mean, keep in mind, like these conferences, they're taking down the folding chairs themselves and they're staying in a hotel lobby. Like this guy, this was like at best a Best Western. Like this was not an amazing conference by any standards. He had to regularly stay with family members on couches. This was not a glamorous thing whatsoever. So maybe he was like the big shot in this very, very small group. But I mean, we've all seen pictures of him. He was definitely nothing. He was nothing worth throwing your life away for.
And this was pre her makeover of him too.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no idea. She could have been institutionalized right then and there, in my opinion. Like you made out with this stranger who had an erection from selling books with you.
I don't know. I do not understand it. I don't. For the life of me, I never will. Like, no, honestly, same. The chapter 3, with MG showing up for her little piece of the action, like, makes more sense.
It does. It needed that, though. It definitely needed some closure.
And I know, Brittany, we're going to record, like, more updates and whatnot from some of the dumps. Like, so many people have requested that we cover additional documents and whatnot. But, like, the Lori and MG saga gets even gayer.
Oh, boy, does it. All of it is just insane, but I just am so grateful that Chandler PD was like, guys, look at this.
I bet that got passed around the office and had quite a few eyes on it.
Oh my gosh. I was in so much pain when I first read this already. Reading this, like I had to take so many breaks because I couldn't handle laughing. Like I was laughing to the point of painful tears. This was the funniest thing I had read, I think probably this year even.
I have to concur with that, to be honest.
This is hilarious. Chad should have been writing this, and he would have been way more popular.
Probably would have made more money, for sure.
Definitely would have made more money.
Ugh.
It's very niche, though. You got to find that audience that, like, understands Mormon theology, but is entirely okay with being blasphemous as hell.
Can't have sex, though.
Can't have sex. We can do skin touching. We can do delicious hugs.
Skin to skin contact, but don't you dare have intercourse.
Cannot P to V this.
No, you can't. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Feel free, if you need to take a little bit of time and just enjoy these chapters together. You've got this document now, so you just enjoy that.
I may just read it every night before I go to bed.
Yeah, and who knows whose spirits will join you.
Please don't. If you're out there listening, please don't. Keep your spirit in your own house. Do not send it my way, please.
I was insinuating Chad Daybell's, but okay.
Ugh. That's it for today, guys. I hope that we were able to make you laugh. Again, please don't be offended or clutch your pearls. This was purely for entertainment value because two despicable people found each other, and this was the writing that somehow came out of that unholy union. But yeah, had a blast doing it. And in closing, for future show notes, I guess, a lot of stuff has happened. We had a lot of movement in the Barry Morphew case. He went back to a hearing. His girlfriend was arrested. Well, alleged girlfriend was arrested for trespassing at an old home with Suzanne. We have the Gabby Petito case, which is probably the biggest news that I would like to cover, and I will be bringing an update episode on shortly. Gabby Petito, as everyone knows, was found deceased. We've covered that. And then Brian Laundrie's remains were also just found in the Carlton Reserve. So a lot to talk about there and a lot to break down. There is a lot of misinformation circulating in the Gabby Petito case regarding the discovery of Brian Laundrie. What was his parents' involvement in the discovery of, a backpack or items belonging to him? There's a lot of information circulating out there. So we are going to be discussing that and have an update episode out on that later this week. Again, a Patreon-only episode is coming, Gabby Petito news, and then I have a really cool case that I actually just recently heard of and that I have been working on in my spare time coming as well. So a lot is on the horizon, guys. I have not disappeared off the face of the earth. Just had to get some stuff tucked away from personal life and new job, and I am back. I'll see you guys later this week. Until next crime.